So I was talking to him, and I don't know, it was a really long talk, but then she came around and ruined everything, and I got so mad at him, and I didn't want to talk to him anymore, so I didn't, and I don't know what to do. It's so, I don't know.
It's alright.
I don't know, whatever.
You know, let's just like change the subject. I'm sorry, I'm thinking like, I'm trying to cheer you up, you know?
I know, but it's not like,
You know, we're in a forest. Hello. Trees everywhere. So, why don't we tell a story, you know? Cheer you up.
I don't have one, so.
I have one. It's actually really good. It's called Hansel and Gretel.
Oh, I think I know that.
Have you heard of it?
No? The heck is that?
You've never heard of Hansel and Gretel? Are you serious?
No, is that like a movie or
Are
something?
you serious?
No.
You just tell her. You should
Okay,
tell
I'll
her.
tell you. So once upon a time,
A very poor woodcutter lived in a tiny cottage in the forest with his 2 children, Hansel and Gretel. His second wife often ill-treated the children and was forever nagging the woodcutter. "There's not enough food in the house for all of us. There are too many mouths to feed. We must get rid of the 2 brats," she declared. And she kept on trying to persuade her husband to abandon his children in the forest. "Take them miles from home, so far that they can never find their way back. Maybe someone will find them and give them a home." The sad woodcutter didn't know what to do. Hansel, who one evening had overheard his parents' conversation, comforted Gretel. "Don't worry, if they do leave us in the forest, we'll find the way home," he said, and slipping out of the house he filled his pockets with little white pebbles, then went back to bed. All night long the woodcutter's wife nagged her husband till, at dawn, he led Hansel and Gretel away into the forest. But as they went into the depths of the trees, Hansel dropped a little white pebble here and there on the mossy green ground. At a certain point, the 2 children found they really were alone. The woodcutter had plucked up enough courage to leave them. Night fell, but the woodcutter did not return. Gretel began to sob. Hansel, too, felt scared, but he tried to hide his feelings and comfort his sister. "Don't cry, trust me, I swear, I'll take you home, even if Father doesn't come back for us." Luckily, the moon was full that night, and Hansel waited till it was bright enough to see. "Now give me your hand," he said. "We'll get home safely, you'll see." The tiny white pebbles gleamed in the moonlight, and the children found their way home. They crept through a half-open window, without wakening their parents. Cold, tired, but thankful to be home again, they slipped into bed. The next day, when their stepmother discovered that Hansel and Gretel had returned, she went into a rage. Their stepmother kept Hansel and Gretel under lock and key all day with nothing for supper but a sip of water and some hard bread. When morning came, she let the children out into the forest. Hansel, however, had not eaten his bread, and as he walked through the trees, he left a trail of crumbs behind him to mark the way. But the little boy had forgotten about the hungry birds that lived in the forest. When they saw him, they flew along behind, and in no time at all had eaten all the crumbs. Again, the woodcutter left his 2 children by themselves. "I've left a trail like last time," Hansel whispered to Gretel. But when night fell, they saw that all the crumbs had gone. "I'm frightened," wept Gretel. "I'm cold and hungry, and I want to go home." "Don't be afraid. I'm here to look after you." Hansel tried to encourage his sister, but he was also cold and scared. All night the 2 children huddled together for warmth underneath the tree. When dawn broke, they started to wander about the forest, seeking a path, but all hope soon faded. They were lost. They walked and walked till suddenly they came upon a strange cottage. "This is chocolate," gasped Hansel as he broke a lump of plaster from the wall. "And this is icing," exclaimed Gretel, putting another piece of wall into her mouth. Starving but delighted, the children began to eat pieces of candy broken off the cottage. "Isn't this delicious?" said Gretel, with her mouth full. She had never tasted anything so nice. "We'll stay here," Hansel declared, munching a bit of nougat. They were just about to try a piece of the biscuit door when it quietly swung open. Well, said an old woman, peering out with a silly look. "And haven't you children a sweet tooth? Come in, you've got nothing to fear," went on the old woman. Unluckily for Hansel and Gretel, the sugar candy cottage belonged to an old witch, her trap. The 2 children had come to a really nasty place. "You're nothing but skin and bones," and the witch locking Hansel into a cage. "I shall fatten you up and eat you." "You can do the housework," she told Gretel. "Then I'll make a meal of you too." As luck would have it, the witch had very bad eyesight. "Let me feel your finger," said the witch to Hansel every day to check if he was getting any fatter. Now, Gretel had brought her brother a chicken bone, And when the witch went to touch his finger, Hansel held out the bone. "You're still much too thin," she complained. "When will you become plump?" One day the witch grew tired of waiting. "Light the oven," she told Gretel. "We're going to have a tasty roast boy today." A little later, hungry and impatient, she went on, "Run and see if the oven is hot enough." Gretel returned, whimpering, "I can't tell if it's hot enough or not." Angrily, the witch screamed at the little girl, "Useless child, all right, I'll see for myself." But when the witch bent down to peer inside the oven and check for heat, Gretel gave her a big push and slammed the oven door shut. The witch had come to a fit and proper end. Gretel ran to set her brother free, and they made sure that the oven door was tightly shut behind the witch. Inside the house, they found a bucket of gold coins. They filled a large bucket with food and set off into the forest to search for the way home. This time, luck was with them, and on the second day, they saw their father come out of the house towards them crying, "Your stepmother is dead. Come home with me now, my dear children." The two children hugged their father. "Promise you'll never ever desert us again," said Gretel, throwing her arms around her father's neck. Hansel showed him the bucket. "Look, father, we're rich now. You'll never have to chop wood again." And they all lived happily ever after.
And the end.
Oh my god, that was like such a cute story.
Right? I love that.
Yeah.
Thing. But wait. No. That's not how it goes.
How does it go?
No, that's not how it goes. That's not how it goes. I have the right version. This is how it goes.
Once upon a time, in a desolate farm, there lived a broken family of a man, his second wife, and his two children, Hansel and Gretel. Their only source of food was a morsel of bread a day. Because of this, their father's second wife thought of a way to bring more food to the household, to rid themselves of Hansel and Gretel. "I'll tell you what, husband," answered the woman. "Early tomorrow morning we will take the children out into the forest to where it is the thickest. There we will light a fire for them and give each of them one more piece of bread. And then we will go to our work and leave them alone. They will not find the way home again, and we shall be rid of them." "No, wife," said the man, "I will not do that. How can I bear to leave my children alone in the forest? The wild animals would soon come and tear them to pieces." "Oh, you fool," she said. "Then we must all four die of hunger. You may as well plane the planks for our coffins." The night before the evil stepmother's conniving plan, Hansel creeped out into the deep, dark wilderness to acquire some white pebbles. The next morning, the stepmother shrieked in the faces of the children, "Get up, you sluggards! We are going into the forest to fetch wood." In the dark trenches of the forest, Hansel and Gretel were hopelessly abandoned, left with one crumb of bread to die. But the pebbles that young Hansel had intentionally plucked from the ground of the farm had been perfectly planted on the way into the dark forest. That way, Hansel and Gretel were saved and could find their way back into the evil hands of the stepmother. They walked the whole night long, shivering and hungry and crying for their father, and by break of day came once more to their father's house. They knocked at the door, and when the woman opened it and saw that it was Hansel and Gretel, she said, "You naughty children, why have you slept so long in the forest? We thought you were never coming back at all." The father, however, rejoiced, for it had cut him to the heart to leave them behind alone. The stepmother was furious and began to formulate another plan to permanently be rid of these nuisances. The husband could not fight the words of the evil stepmother, so he forced himself to allow her to have her way with them. She grabbed them forcefully by the wrist and dragged them into the forest, and this time only giving them half of the bread they received before. They began to walk again, but they always came deeper into the forest. Meanwhile, Hansel dropped what was left of his bread to leave another trail. Again, their father's second wife did not return, and if help did not come soon, they must die of hunger and weariness. So, in the moonlight, they tried to follow the bread trail, but devious crows had gobbled up all of the crumbs. Hansel and Gretel decided to trek on anyway, and made their way to a very unconventional home. This home was made of not wood, but of cookies and sugar. Starved and nearing insanity, they sprinted towards the house and began to scarf down the roof and the windows. Then, out of the doorway, an old woman invited them into their delicious home. She offered them food and a warm place to sleep. The old woman had only pretended to be so kind. She was, in reality, a wicked witch who lay in wait for children, and had only built the little house of bread in order to entice them there. When a child fell into her power, she killed it, cooked, and ate it, and that was a feast day with her. Witches have red eyes and cannot see far, but they have a keen scent like the beasts, and are aware when human beings draw near. Early in the morning, before the children were awake, she was already up, and when she saw both of them sleeping and looking so pretty with their plump and rosy cheeks, she muttered to herself, "That will be a dainty mouthful." Then she seized Hansel with her shriveled hand, carried him into a little stable, and locked him in behind a grated door. Scream as he might, it would not help him. Every day, Hansel took a chicken bone and nervously held it up to the witch's hand so she could make sure he was stuffed enough and ripe for the picking. When she realized that he wasn't ever going to be plump enough, she said, "Let Hansel be fat or lean. Tomorrow I will kill him and cook him. But we will bake first," said the old woman. "I have already heated the oven and kneaded the dough." She pushed poor Gretel out to the oven, from which flames of fire were already darting. "Creep in," said the witch, "and see if it is properly heated, so that we can put the bread in." And once Gretel was inside, she intended to shut the oven and let her bake in it, and then she would eat her too. But Gretel saw what she had in mind, and said, "I do not know how I am to do it. How do I get in?" "Silly goose," said the old woman. "The door is big enough. Just look, I can get in myself." And she crept up and thrust her head into the oven. Then Gretel gave her a push that drove her far into it, and shut the iron door and fastened the bolt. Oh, then she began to howl quite horribly, while her skin melted off her unholy bones and her organs began to cook. But Gretel ran away, and the godless witch was miserably burnt to death. Gretel fetched Hansel from the grate, stole all the gold jewels she could find, and they scurried home to their father. When they arrived back home, their father greeted them with open arms and happy tears. They asked where his second wife was, and the father told them that she was stricken by famine and died a slow, awful death. Now, with the stepmother gone and the witch burnt to a crisp, they all lived happily ever after with the dead witch's loot.